Part 28. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 272. Okay. Bleeding, Sira grasped the key point, but couldn't help but turn around and vaguely saw a twisted figure lying on the ground. A hand quickly covered her eyes, completely blocking her vision. Eric's deep voice rang in his ears, "Don't look at it, you'll have nightmares." Sira grabbed his hand, his blood was sucked away. Eric put his arm around her waist and rubbed it gently with his fingertips. He did not hide it from her, a vampire came up from the sea last night. The town will not be peaceful recently. You have to be good at home. These words were a bit like coaxing a child, which made Sierra's ears turn red inexplicably, and her voice became softer. "I know, the police officers in the town will take care of it anyway." Eric put her at the door of the manor and held her little hand. "I will be very busy these 2 days, if you want to see me." "I want to see you every night." Sierra held his hand. "If you are free, come." Eric's heart skipped a beat, his honey-colored cheeks turned pink. "Okay." Back in the house, Lizzie was sitting in the living room reading the newspaper. She glanced at Sierra and said in a deep voice, "What does it look like when you go out to play with Orion alone?" Sierra replied lightly, "This home has been suffocating me lately. It would be better to go hunting with the hunters and breathe the forest air than here." Lizzie choked, her face turned ugly, and she didn't refute her. He heard what Sierra said about the rabbit incident yesterday and found out that it was a frame-up directed and acted by Anna 11 and her servants. He took a deep breath and said, "No one can challenge your place in the family, Sierra." Sierra nodded, walked over gracefully and sat down. "Father, I won't care too much about Anna 11, but it would be too ugly if her unflattering tricks were shown outside. You don't usually let the teacher do it at home. Give her lessons." Lizzie really hadn't thought about this and subconsciously replied, "Chiaoki takes care of all the family affairs." Before he finished speaking, he seemed to react suddenly. Sierra even laughed unabashedly. "A mistress who grew up in poverty, does she know how to manage and educate children? Don't be too confused. Send Anashi out to class to learn etiquette and then come back. As for Mrs. Josie, let her buy less clothes and spend more on the expenses of the manor, so that everyone in the family can live better." When she went upstairs, Lizzie sat there for a long time without regaining consciousness. At the dinner table that night, he finalized the schedule for Anaxi to go to class without mentioning Sierra at all. The mother and daughter knew in their hearts who was responsible for this. Sierra ate her dinner dignifiedly with a bright smile. The next morning, while reading the newspaper, she ordered the gardener to pull out all the hydrangeas in the garden, leaving only a small patch of roses. Josie saw that all her beloved flowers had broken roots and were piled aside, and she was instantly angry. "Crazy, I'm going to give Sierra a slap in the face." She refused to evade and retreated. She endured the blow abruptly and then fell to the ground and became unconscious. Chiao 11 never expected that this girl who had just come of age from afar would have such a scheme. Far beyond her expectations. Sierra waited until Lizzie called the doctor, and the swollen slap marks on her face were plastered. Then she woke up leisurely, and 2 clear tears fell from her beautiful almond eyes on the spot. "I just want to plant the roses my mother likes. Dad, I really don't know why she lost such a temper." She whimpered and threw herself into Lizzie's arms, her thin shoulders trembling, her cold white skin covering her bones in a thin layer, looking very pitiful. In Lizzie's eyes, this was not the first time that mother and daughter had bullied Sierra. He was not unkind to Clemens. If she didn't insist on leaving, how could anyone try to replace her? He just made a mistake, but it caused his only daughter with aristocratic blood to be in such a mess. Lizzie slapped Josie with her backhand and said coldly, "She just changed a batch of flowers, and you slapped her? Did you slap our girl casually?" Chiao 11 fell to the ground, her nails digging into her palms, but she didn't dare to say a word because of the class gap. Sierra stared at Josie quietly through the gap between Lizzie's arms, with a provocative smile on her lips. The news that the lover had slapped the Countess was revealed by some servant and spread like wildfire. The next day it was even published in the morning newspaper, right under Wally's column about vampire demons. Sierra looked at the newspaper and took the initiative to tell Lizzie about it, asking him to find out the person who revealed the news and drive him away. Her dignity in maintaining family dignity is in sharp contrast to Josie, who cries and doesn't know what to do because her reputation has been damaged. Within a few days, the servant who revealed the news was driven away. Before leaving, she received a large amount of pocket money from Sierra, enough for her to live happily for several years. As for Josie, Lizzie and she were said to be sleeping in separate rooms. Seeing her settling down, Sierra felt comfortable and focused on the murderer appearing in the town. Eric hadn't shown up for several days, hadn't come to accompany her at night, and hadn't sent game to the manor. This was not normal. Because of that vampire? Her intuition told her so. She looked at the fresh roses growing in the garden and bit her nails, feeling a little worried. Anna 11 appeared behind her at some point and invited her, "Let's go swimming in the lake together." Sierra turned her eyes and said hello. The small wooden boat floated to the center. In the rainy weather, both of them held umbrellas. Looking at the ripples on the lake, Sierra stretched out her hand and asked, "What do you want to say?" "Go and tell your father to let me come back." "I don't want to go to that school." Anna 11's face was ugly and a little sickly pale. "Why?" "They will bully me. They don't care that I am the Earl's daughter." This trick was also done by Sierra. She knew that the teachers in that girls' school would force people to bully students as long as they were paid. In the dream, she had experienced everything before, and now she has avoided the past. She became the one in control. Sierra's hand that was fiddling with the lake water stopped. "You have to go to your father about this matter. What's the use of going to me? Didn't you suggest it? You framed me." Anna 11 stood up excitedly and pointed at her angrily, causing the boat to sway. Sierra had to hold on to the edge of the boat. As her eyes swayed, she keenly caught a trace of black seaweed rising from the green lake water. "It looks more like the top of human hair than seaweed." Her expression changed and she yelled at Anasi, "Shut up! Sit down and paddle back." An 11 was startled by her. "Why are you so fierce?" Before she finished the last word, she saw a hand that was so pale that there was no trace of blood pulled the edge of the boat, and the voice suddenly turned into a scream. The hand came close to Sierra, and without thinking, she picked up the paddle and slammed it against the hand. "After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the shore." Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 273. While paddling to the shore, Anai screamed at the servants on the shore, "Help! Someone come quickly!" The pale hand seemed to be made of stone, gripping the edge of the boat motionless. A face as if enamel appeared on the side of the boat, the scarlet eyes narrowed slightly, and a pair of fangs showed in a smile. "Good morning, girls." He instantly climbed onto the boat, faced Anaxi who kept screaming until she almost fainted, and bared his fangs. "You're too noisy." As soon as she finished speaking, Sierra saw her figure missing from the boat, and there was a splashing sound in her ears. She suddenly turned around and saw that Anna 11 was being pulled down. She quickly rowed the boat over, picked up the oar and stabbed the dark figure in the water. The vampire who was about to bite Anna 11's neck was caught off guard and stabbed away. Sela dropped the oar, held out his hand to her, and shouted, "Come up here." Anaxi swam forward desperately, grabbed her hand, and climbed up in the swaying boat. The servants on the shore screamed and were at a loss. Anaxi wiped her face and saw the vampire coming behind Sierra again. She yelled and pushed her on the shoulder. Sierra fell back instantly. Wherever she looked, there was a black figure running towards her at full speed, and there was a desperate roar, Sierra. This episode had never happened in a dream. She fell into the lake, and the icy water reached her head. The biting chill penetrated her nose along the water. The green water in front of her amplified her frightened senses. The scarlet eyes were so close that they became particularly dazzling. The hem of her skirt was easily torn by that hand, her waist was grabbed by someone, and her head was pushed to one side, exposing her slender neck. In the eyes of a vampire, the carotid artery is like a meal about to be served. He opens his mouth and is about to bite it. A bullet grazed Sierra's cheek and hit the vampire's shoulder, causing him to let go of her. A figure fell into the water and swam towards her vigorously. Sierra saw Eric's handsome face in her floating long hair. Her hand was grabbed by someone, and her thick sexy lips pressed over, pouring oxygen into her lungs that were about to explode. Eric took the man out of the water at an extremely fast speed, and several companions, including Gale, all arrived on the periphery and forced the confused vampire to the shore in the form of a wolf. Sierra lay down on the green grass, and under Eric's kisses several times, she coughed violently and choked out a lot of water. Ahem. She leaned weakly in his arms, her face pale. Eric was so distressed that he put the person into his arms and hugged him tightly. I'm late. It's not too late. Sierra hugged his neck, pressed her cold cheek against his hot chest, and breathed out. 5 or 6 wolves that were about the same size as horses appeared in the manor. This scene was almost like a fantasy. Those giant wolves with fangs were as fast as lightning and scared a bunch of people. Eric stood up with Sierra in his arms, looked at several passing wolves, and entered the house. Under the surprised look of the servant, he carried the person to the room with familiarity, and also told the people passing by, "Go and prepare hot water. Your lady is frightened and needs to take a bath." The servants were talking and busy while working. "What's going on outside? My eyes are not blurry, why is there such a big wolf? Oh my God. Call the police." Those sounds penetrated into Sierra's ears. She clutched Eric's clothes tightly and said in a hoarse voice, "You know those wolves, right? They didn't hurt us." Eric didn't know what to say to her. He sat down on the sink in the bathroom, put his hands on the countertop, and looked at her. "Well, I once told you that there are better things than freak shows show you." Sierra nodded. "What is it?" "It's them." Eric touched her pale face, a trace of worry appeared on his face. "I told you, but don't be afraid, okay?" Sierra wrapped her hands around his neck and touched their foreheads. "You saved me, I'm not afraid." Eric listened to her normal heartbeat, and then he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "They are all my family. Before the age of 18, we will live like normal people. After the age of 18, the transformed werewolves will follow us. Fusion, if I suffer too much anger or an enemy invades, I may become like that in advance." Sierra answered his question, "A big dog like that?" Hearing that she was joking, Eric couldn't help but nuzzled the tip of her nose and said softly, "Well, it's just such a big dog." "So are you over 18, Eric?" Before Sierra could find an answer to her inquiry, a servant came in with boiled water. Eric stopped talking in time and said in her ear, "I'll come to see you tonight." Then he jumped from the bathroom window and left. Sierra rushed to the window and looked, seeing that he had run away intact. The superpowers of werewolves are really reflected in all aspects. She took off her wet clothes and lay in the bathtub. She was thinking about something in her eyes. Her fingers slowly touched her chest. Her fragile heart was beating fast because of seeing such an exciting scene. She wasn't afraid at all, and even found the large, fluffy, and soft animals to be particularly cute. When Anaxi hid back home, her heart had not completely calmed down from the fear, but through the window of the library, she saw Eric running past her. He noticed her gaze and turned around. His eyes were cold and terrifying, without any hint of the companionship he had barely shown. There is no doubt that he must have seen the scene where Sierra pulled her up, but in the end she pushed him down. Anna 11 looked at the system, and the reminder of the family relationship value suddenly fell down, turning into a strange symbol, and she screamed in disbelief. How come? She just pushed her sister. What does it have to do with Eric? Why would he hate himself so much? Before she could think of an answer, two huge wolves appeared in front of her again with a vampire in their mouths. They didn't seem to notice that there was another person behind the glass. Their mouths fiercely pulled towards each other, and the struggling vampire's body was torn into two halves on the spot. Countless plaster-like body fragments were smashed onto the glass. Such a bloody scene of dismemberment made Anaxi roll her eyes and fainted. The news that the two young ladies were seriously ill spread to the streets, and Lizzie and Lychee, who were going to see the freak show, hurried back. After listening to the servants saying that a wolf bigger than a horse appeared in the manor, the two thought it was a joke until they saw that Syrah had a high fever and her throat was hoarse and could not speak a word. Anaxi was still frightened and fell into a coma. And then took this matter to heart. Lizzie, where's the body? The servant said hastily, it was carried away by a wolf. Everyone below had the same caliber. Lizzie turned pale and quickly called the police station and asked them to come with shotguns to hunt the wolves. Syrah was not unable to speak after taking the medicine, but intuitively, she did not want to reveal the information about the wolves. She pretended to be asleep and dismissed all the servants. The small window was deliberately left unlocked, and the fit young man climbed in quietly along the sewage pipe. She took off her muddy boots on the window sill, and as Eric came closer, a faint smell of soap lingered on the tip of Sierra's nose. He came home and took a shower. The mattress next to her collapsed, and his hot body quietly pressed against her back. You have a fever. He felt that her body temperature was abnormal, and touched her face with his warm palm. Are you feeling uncomfortable? Sierra reluctantly opened her eyes and shook her head. It's okay. It was obvious that his voice was hoarse, so he pinched the corners of the quilt to cover him more tightly, but the girl turned around, took the initiative to bury herself in his chest, and hugged his waist with one hand. Eric's body froze with such an attached movement, and then he hugged him even harder. Sierra took a breath of hot air and said in a hoarse voice, is the one you killed today the monster that has been sucking human blood in the town recently? Eric did not deny it and said truthfully, yes, the water coming from the sea covered his scent. We lost him last night, but we didn't expect him to be hidden in the lake of your manor. Fortunately. He said thankfully, fortunately, I have been not far from you recently and saved you in time when I smelled the smell. Sierra leaned into his arms. There are many servants in the manor, and they all saw the mighty wolf. You also saw the police car at the door when you just came here. The police will investigate. Eric was silent. I am also a witness. Tomorrow morning at the latest, they will go to the tribe to find me to interrogate the situation. Sierra raised her head, her eyes filled with mist. They won't find out about you. No, but we should move. Eric touched the top of her hair. Gail and Robinson think it is no longer safe here. Many people have seen us. The truth will be revealed one day. Moving, Sierra pressed her palm against his chest, actually supporting half of her body on him. You want to move? Her hanging hair rubbed against Eric's face, tickling him a little. He held back the heat in his abdomen and whispered, well, but I don't want to leave. When he said this, his eyes were fixed on her, as if he was waiting for her to say don't leave. But for the sake of Eric's safety, Sierra really couldn't say anything to ask him to stay for a while. She lowered her eyes in silence, blinked her long eyelashes again and again, and finally closed her heart cruelly and turned aside. Shrink away. I understand, tell me the day you are leaving and I will go and see you off. Eric's heart seemed to be clenched tightly by an invisible hand and pulled hard. He lay behind her, a little aggrieved. I would rather you say let me stay, or go with me. Sierra's bent fingers were slightly stiff, and she saw that there was no warning in the system. After falling into the water and reaching a favorability level of 100, she knew that the person behind her was telling the truth. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the shore. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 274. She turned around again. Walk with you? Do you know what my life is like now? Eric looked at her and said with a serious face, of course I know. I started saving money a few years ago. The money at home is enough to buy you a beautiful dress and a small cake. This time it was Sierra's turn to be stunned. Did you save money by hunting? Eric scratched his head. There are other things too. I have also repaired railways, handled goods, and helped people repair machines. The pay for machines will be higher. Knowing that she would appear in his life, he started preparing everything in advance a few years ago and tried his best to save enough money to support her. If it didn't work, he would choose to join the army. Sierra's heart trembled. Are you willing to give me all the money you have saved for several years? Buy me a dress and a small cake. Yes, I do. Eric nodded, his voice sonorous and powerful. She thought that such men had become extinct a long time ago, but in fact they really existed, and they looked like they were happy with them. Sierra bit her lower lip. Then let me think about it. Eric pressed his head against her silk pillow. What are you considering? Sierra pressed her pounding chest, turned her eyes away from him, and said in a low voice, consider running away with you. After she finished speaking, there was no movement around her for a while. She couldn't help but raise her eyes to look at him again. She saw that Eric's pupils were dilated due to shock, and his eyes were wide open like a silly big dog waiting to be petted. Sierra found it funny, and a sweet smile appeared on her face. Eric couldn't hold back. He leaned forward, bit her lips, and kissed her deeply. The two people's breaths were entangled, and the temperature on the bed rose a lot. Sierra whimpered twice, lowered her hand to his chin and pushed him away reluctantly. My nose is stuffed. Then take a breath. She really took a breath and wanted to say something, but was blocked by the lips that came up to kiss her. Even through the thick quilt, Sierra felt something was wrong with Eric's body. She bit his chin. The boy had a little stubble, which made her feel a little itchy. That's enough for you, I'm still sick. Eric took a deep breath and was reluctant to let her go. He nestled in the crook of her neck and whispered, you are so sweet, sweeter than candy. Sierra's face, which was red due to fever, became even redder now. She didn't expect that a young man who had not yet transformed into a wolf could still be so arousing when talking about love. The two hugged each other on the bed for a long time, until Sierra fell asleep, and then Eric asked her in a low voice, can I borrow your bathroom? Can. Thinking that he was going to the bathroom, Sierra ignored him and waited for the person to get out of bed and leave before burying his face in the quilt and going to sleep. An hour later, after taking a shower with cold water, Eric slowly came out with only his underwear on him. He got back into bed and held her in his arms. He kissed her forehead and said good night. Then he closed his eyes and fell asleep. When Sierra woke up the next morning, the temperature had long gone out by the bedside. Eric always slipped out of her bedroom one step ahead of the servant. The doctor came to see her condition and said happily, the fever is gone. Surrounded by servants, Sarah changed into a set of light clothes and went downstairs to be investigated by the police. Unexpectedly, Eric slipped out of her room and was sitting on the sofa in the living room. Anaxi was sitting on the other side, and her eyes were obviously nervous when he saw her. Miss Sarah, come and sit down. We are only asking about yesterday's situation. The police officer waved her over. Sarah sat down, picked up the black tea poured by the servant and pursed her lips. Do you want me to tell the truth? I'm afraid this is a bit difficult. She lowered her eyes and said, "At that time, Anaxi and I were rowing together. There was a person hiding under the water. His skin was colorless and his eyes were blood red. He suddenly climbed up and swept her away." The police officer said unambiguously, "But I heard from the servant that it was you who almost died after falling into the water." Sierra was a little silent, her eyes wandering on Jiaoqi and Anna 11. "I rescued Anna 11 and pulled her onto the boat, but I was pushed down by her. I didn't lie, every word is true." Lizzie's eyes changed and she looked at Anna 11 fiercely. "Is it true? Didn't you just say in the room that the two of you fell together?" "The servant said so too." The servants surrounding her looked obviously panicked. They looked at Jiaoqian, who gave them a calm look. "Everyone on the left and right has been bribed by her, who else can testify for Sierra?" Under the second interrogation by the police, the servants unswervingly protected Anna 11. Eric, who was sitting there watching Sierra almost cry, took out the 5 gold coins in his pocket and put them on the table. "I still have a hard time with my conscience. I'm sorry, Mrs. Josie, but I can't give you perjury." In an instant, more than a dozen pairs of eyes looked at Jiao 11. She tightened her fingers and rolled her eyes wildly. "What are you talking about?" Eric sighed. "When I first arrived outside, Mrs. Josie gave me gold coins and asked me to swallow everything I saw and heard. Miss Anish said whatever she said was what she said, but..." He paused and said, "I was the one who jumped into the water to rescue Miss Sierra, and I was also the one who saw her push Anaxi into the lake after she rescued her. Without me, she would have drowned long ago." Sierra looked shocked, and cooperated so softly that she acted on the sofa. "I know this family can't tolerate me, but there is no need for the master and the servant to team up to harm me." Lizzie held her crutches with a gloomy look on her face, and sternly questioned all the servants present. "I'll give you one last chance to tell the truth, or you'll all be taken away by the sheriff and imprisoned. If one person betrays the group, then there will be a second and third one." Every servant who helped Anashi give false testimony took out gold coins from his pocket, and all the accusations were directed by Mrs. Josie. The fact is, after Anasi was rescued, she deliberately killed her sister. The police recorded the whole process in the logbook. On suspicion of murder and being related to the murderer in the town outside, Anashi and Josie were tied up with ropes. Jiao 11 was shocked. "Sir, I didn't. It was them who slandered me, master." Anaxi also cried and accused Eric of why he betrayed her. The last sentence she got made her panic. "I have tolerated you acting in front of me for a long time." Even Sierra heard this, and she was a little shocked that he was so smart. Anaxi approached him with a purpose to help him, and she herself was the same. That system. Sierra lowered her eyes, thinking a lot. After the police completed the investigation, they finally kidnapped the lover and his daughter from the Earl's mansion, which caused an uproar in the town. Lizzie had several more white hairs, and she seemed to have just discovered that her lover and daughter, who had been with her for many years, were so ugly. He said to Sierra apologetically, "You have been back for so many days, and they have caused you a lot of trouble." Sierra smiled and waved generously to show that she didn't care. "We are just a family." She walked over and pressed his shoulder. "Father, it doesn't matter. The point is that the commotion in the town is too ugly now. Even if they don't go to jail, you don't want to take people back to live there anymore. Hold a banquet and start from scratch. What you should do is to choose the one you like from among the beautiful countesses or noble ladies to get married, stabilize your status and gain financial resources." Her advice was very pertinent and not for herself at all. Lizzie really took this matter to heart. In the next few days, there was not enough evidence to prove that Josie and her daughter were related to the murderer in the town. They just pushed Sierra into the water and were released safely home. Both of them were pointed out along the way. The fact that they intended to murder the Count's daughter had long been revealed to the newspaper by the police, and everyone knew about it. The car took the two people to a remote two-story building. Josie was confused at first. What are we doing here? The driver said, Master Lizzie said that you will live here from now on, and a servant will bring you living expenses every month. What? Josie held the car door and said in disbelief, we are planning to get married, and I will be a countess soon. Are you kidding me again? The driver replied with a hint of disdain, no one is kidding you, and the countess is not you either. The car was put down and the person ran away quickly. Josie fell to the ground, never expecting why Lizzie's mood changed so quickly. Sierra has been busy holding parties in the manor recently, and all the guests are single young women, completely allowing Lizzie to fall in love freely. The effect was remarkable. He was almost dazzled by the beauty surrounding him, and he couldn't remember Josie, who was far away outside. When Josie got her first monthly payment and got into the car and arrived at the gate of the manor, the servants stopped her from entering. She could only look across the fence at the man who was supposed to be her husband from a distance, holding hands with her. A young and beautiful girl in a fancy dress goes on a cruise. Sierra hid among the roses in the garden and quietly went on a date with Eric, who climbed over the wall. Since Greenie from their tribe is pregnant, their departure will be postponed for at least a month. Sierra held several letters in her hands and leaned in Eric's arms to open one and read it. She had known for a long time that Anaxi would not be able to sit still and wanted to retaliate against Eric, so she went to the post office and around the house in advance. Arranged people. All letters sent would eventually reach her. She knows you're a werewolf too, she said to Eric, holding up the letter. He took the envelope and sneered, she should be lucky that we don't eat people. Sierra raised her head and scratched his chin, I will scare her. Eric kissed her soft palm, and then heard her ask, but are you not afraid at all that I am approaching you with a purpose? He smiled, his moist breath touched her hand, and his magnetic voice was sexy and low, I'm afraid you have no purpose and won't come close to me. Sierra turned around, pressed her hand on his abdomen, and said with a smile on her lips, really? Yes. Eric lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. He felt that the juice on his lips was very sweet. He clasped his fingers on the back of her neck and went a little deeper. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Shire. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 275. Wow. Sierra opened her blurred eyes and turned around to see a little girl with red cheeks holding a book. She picked up the book and ran away in a hurry. Don't you go after her? She will tell your father about us. Eric pinched her face. Sierra shook her head and replied with a smile, I'm not afraid. I didn't want to hide you in the first place. Moreover, her father has fallen in love with a new man and has no time to care about her. When the weather turned cooler, Lizzie married a young widowed countess of equal status, childless, and only in her 20s. The day Sierra went to church for their wedding, snow fell from the sky. Chiao 11 brought people here to make trouble countless times, but Lizzie, who already had a younger and more beautiful wife, was already bewitched and didn't want to look at the old yellow face again. On the day when Josie went crazy because of her dream of being a countess, Lizzie found a good match for Anashi. The other party was a baron about his age, who had lost his wife and had a wealthy family. Anai didn't like it at all, but as her mistress's child was born at that time, she was destined to have no choice and could only be forced to marry that man. Sierra also knew a little about the baron. In the dream, he was the one she was going to marry. He was not a good character and Anaxi would not have a good life if she married him. When she cried and begged her to intercede, Sierra knelt down and patted her face, her smile not reaching her eyes. We were competitors in another time and space, and of course it will not change in this time and space. Keeping you alive is already a gift. It's better than leaving your body in the wilderness, having your head chopped off, or being eaten by dogs. I won't let you go. Sierra. I'm going to tell Eric the truth. You don't really love him. Anaxi howled and was pushed into the wedding car. Sierra waved to her with a fan, "Goodbye sister, happy wedding." This annoying mother and daughter, one went to a mental hospital to perform a lobotomy, which Lizzie said would calm the mentally ill, and the other went to the other side of the ocean. There was no accident, and there never will be came back. Lizzie received a large sum of money as a bride price, and she and her new wife were even closer. Sierra lives like a princess every day, but she knows that the Countess has a secret. She has a lover. At the end of the first month of their marriage, she announced she was pregnant. Sierra looked at Lizzie's smile that reached behind her ears, and the mockery in her eyes was well hidden. In fact, from the beginning, the Countess was prepared by her in advance. She gave her a dress that Clemens would like during her lifetime and asked her to get close to Lizzie. As for why we do this, the reason is very simple. Her mother worked hard to raise her in Leicestershire for 18 years, and finally died of tuberculosis. Lizzie didn't even look at her. He deserved retribution. He didn't know how desperate he would be the day he knew the truth after being devoured by a stranger's child and becoming his first heir. Sierra was looking forward to that scene. She counted the days until she would leave with Eric, and took a hush money from the Countess, but she still couldn't hide her love affair with Eric, and was reported first. It's not surprising that she often kisses the sunny boy wantonly in the rose garden, and there will always be gardeners passing by who will see her. You also fell in love with that Orion? Is he also here to seduce you? Lizzie was furious and was about to slap Sierra on the face. The beautiful lady with the pregnant belly quickly went over to stop her. She said that they were on the same boat and she had to help no matter what. Master, don't be angry. Sierra was also temporarily confused. She will always figure it out on her own. She is so smart. Lizzie was worried about the child in her wife's belly, so she took a breath and said, "While no one knows about this, you should cut off your relationship with Eric immediately, right now. No matter what, you will marry a viscount or baron in the future. I will never allow your life to be stained by being with lowly hunters." These words indirectly scolded the two people. The smile on the beautiful lady's face faded a bit, and even the look on Sierra's expression showed a kind of pity for someone in distress. At night, the two of them talked in the room. "What do you think? Let that Orion be your lover." Sierra drank hot tea and replied calmly, "I don't want to walk the same path as you." The Countess was surprised. "Are you going to marry him? You know your father will definitely not agree." Sierra smiled, "Who said I would stay here and let him preside over my marriage?" "You want to elope?" The Countess's eyes flashed with a subtle light, and there was an unnoticeable excitement. Sierra looked at her and said with a smile, "Otherwise, what would I do with your hush money? If you dare to elope, you won't get a dime from this family. It will all belong to me and my children." The Countess suppressed her beating heart. Sierra looked indifferent. "Take it. When I asked you to seduce my father, we had different goals. You want property, I want freedom. Just don't kill him." The Countess never expected that she could be so cold-blooded. She stared at her for a while and then said numbly, "Okay, but I also want to tell you something." She took out a letter and handed it to Sierra, while saying, "I heard from Lizzie and the people in the town that giant wolves and blood-sucking murderers had appeared in the manor. This matter was informed by the police to the capital and the church. After checking, your father and the people from the police station said that Eric's group of people live in the mountains and don't usually interact with others, so we suspect that they are the ones responsible." Sierra's heart suddenly tightened. She grabbed the letter and looked at it carefully, and asked hurriedly, "When did it happen?" "It was half a month ago. Counting the days, the church should have arrived today. You have to know that people in the church have never had a good impression of these mythical demons, but regardless of whether they are human or not, they will definitely kill them all." Sierra dropped the letter and rushed out of the door, not caring about the shouts behind her. She never thought that what she had avoided from Anashi, the informant, would happen to Lizzie. She hoped that Eric and the others would beat all those people down as fiercely as they had in the dream, but she had also heard that Greenie was pregnant. If anything happened, it would be really troublesome. Cyril went to the stable and brought out a black horse. Wearing a thin nightgown in the winter, she galloped out of the manor and headed straight for the mountains of the Black Forest. The journey was long and it took her 2 hours to reach the foot of the mountain. Because the road up the mountain was rugged, many police cars and classic cars were parked here instead of going up. She thought that she must be late, so she whipped the horse hard and let it lead her into the mountains. The closer you get to the top, the more you can see a bright light gradually enlarging, and you can also feel the heat blowing towards your face. On fire. Her palms were sweating, and she was extremely nervous as she listened to the howls of wolves from the top of the mountain. Don't worry, Eric. Sarah reached the top of the mountain with great difficulty. The screams of the men in black robes could not be heard. Bodies were scattered everywhere in the mountain forest. Huge wolves of different colors shuttled among them, with broken limbs and arms, dripping with blood. It was like a scene from a slaughterhouse, which made Sarah's throat tighten and her stomach feel uncomfortable. She endured her discomfort and hid in the dark to look for Eric, but she couldn't see him at all. Apart from the men in black robes and police officers, there were only wolves. And soon, the last person was bitten to death by a gray wolf. They smelled Sarah's scent in an environment with a strong smell of blood. A brown wolf silently pounced from behind her, bit her back collar, and threw her in front of the burning house. Everyone recognized who she was, and the wolves whispered to each other. When they were about to kill her, a gray wolf with black spots suddenly jumped out of the jungle, threw Sierra under him, and used its abdomen to kill her. Pressing her down and protecting her tightly. It kept showing its fangs in all directions, declaring that this was its mate. Sierra recognized Eric at a glance. Even if he transformed into a wolf, his big eyes still showed a deep affection. Eric. She held his head and said, "You are Eric, right?" The howls of wolves all around her became quieter, and the giant gray wolf lowered its head and nuzzled her face docilely. Sierra hugged him and buried her face in the thick hair on his nose. "I'm very worried about you. I heard that Lizzie wrote a letter and told the church about the wolf. I didn't find out in time, so I came a step too late." Originally, everyone was wary of Sierra because of this matter, but now that they heard what she said, the hostility around them dissipated a lot. Several wolves whined and dispersed, went into the unburned house to find clothes, and then came out to get water from the burning house to put out the fire. Sierra was taken to the house by Eric. His transformation was not very stable now. As soon as he entered the room, he degenerated into a human form and lay on the floor without any clothes on. That perfect figure was exposed, especially at one point. Sierra blushed when she saw it, and hurriedly went to the wooden cabinet to find clothes and put them on him. Eric was a little weak, only feeling that the space between his legs was covered by clothes, and raised his eyes to look for her figure. Sierra thought for a while, then lay down next to him, turned sideways and looked at him. "I'm here. It's none of your business, don't worry, it was us who exposed our whereabouts." "Okay," she nodded obediently. "Are you scared if I become like that?" Eric was a little uneasy. He lowered his eyes and did not dare to look at her. "You can lie to me, just don't say you don't like it." "I'm not afraid." Cyril leaned over and touched his chin. "If I were afraid that you were a wolf, I wouldn't have approached you once I knew your identity." Eric raised his eyes and quickly noticed that she was wearing pajamas. He forced himself to sit up and said, "Why did you come out dressed like this?" Sierra pinched the hem of her skirt sheepishly. "I just heard that people from the church were coming not long ago, so I came out without thinking about anything." She was pulled into the hot embrace, and Eric's voice couldn't stop being excited. "You are worried about me?" Sierra nodded without denying it. "Well, I'm very worried about you." He carried her to the bed, covered the two of them with a quilt, used his body to warm her, and used his tight muscle arms as pillows for her. I am very happy. Sierra smiled, I like you very much, so I'm worried about you, Eric. That's not a lie. The favorability level had already reached 100%, but she did not choose to leave. She lived a miserable life when she left in the dream, which was not good at all. In this world, this little wolf truly loved her, and there was no reason to let him down. She had never had company, and now she wanted company. Eric's breathing was a little heavier, and his tone was a little uncertain. How much do you like it? Saiya raised his head and bit his chin. I love you, is that enough? Eric seemed to have been pressed on the pause button, and his whole body was stunned. After a while, he suddenly came back to his senses, and attacked Sierra with overwhelming kisses. Surrounded by his breath, the heat lingering on Sierra skyrocketed, making her almost breathless. The moment Gale turned into a human and pushed in the door, Eric hit him with a pillow and said, "Get out of here." His voice was hoarse and sexy, which made Sierra blush, and lowered her hand to his chest. He is one of your tribe. No matter what they do. Eric lifted her chin, kissed her deeply, and forced his fingers into hers, interlocking with hers. The long kiss lasted until she almost felt dizzy before it ended. Sierra was panting, her eyes were watery, and her lips were red. Eric's eyes darkened a lot. He wiped away her tears from being kissed, pressed her into his arms, and coaxed softly, "Go to sleep, it's very late today, I'll take you back early tomorrow morning." Sierra nodded and leaned into his arms. She thought that the dryness would keep her awake, but in fact it was a hard journey all the way. She fell asleep in his arms instantly, and her sleep was particularly comfortable and peaceful. It wasn't until she fell asleep that Eric gently let her go, put on her clothes and went out. Gale took the lead and said, "Granny's tire is stable. We have to leave." "What are you going to do with the woman in the house?" Eric said calmly, "I want to take her away." Greenie next to her rubbed her belly and frowned. "If I remember correctly, the lady you are dating is the daughter of an earl. Will she go with you, a poor hunter?" Eric nodded. "She will. He just believed in her and she would never leave him again this time." Gale thought for a while. "She came here wearing a nightgown to show her love for you. Tomorrow at the latest, you have to tell her to go home, pack her things, and leave with us." But is she willing to leave her father behind? Greenie's question made Eric confused for a moment. To be honest, he wasn't sure. "I'll ask her tomorrow morning." A family meeting was settled, and Eric had to wake Sierra up early in the morning when the sky was still dark. He put his thick clothes on her body, looked at her sleepy and pretty face, and touched it distressedly. "I also want you to sleep more, but now I have to let you make a very important decision." "Decide." Sierra rubbed her eyes and braced herself. "You tell me, I'll listen. Do you want to leave with me? Leave Wally to see the outside world, find a new place to settle, and welcome a new and different life?" Sierra was refreshed. She stared at him and asked, "If I want you to abandon your own people and live with me forever, will you agree?" After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 276. Eric really thought about her asking this question and answered without hesitation, "Yes, I will always be with you and I love you." Sierra wrapped her arms around his neck, smiling, "Then the same goes for me, Eric. There are so many scenery in this world that I have never seen before. Please take me to see them." "Good. He will fulfill all her wishes, and as long as she likes it, he will go back and do it." When the sun first rose, Eric rode his horse and took Sierra into the manor, climbing into the house from the high wall along the water pipe. Sierra packed a box of gold coins that she was going to take away and asked Eric to carry it. She also put some comfortable dresses into the box and asked him to carry them. "Does this count as eloping with me?" Eric asked her with a blushing face. Zhang Nuanuan poked his cheek and thought he was cute when he became shy. Yes, you will marry me, right? Eric kissed her fingertips sideways. Yes, we belong to each other forever, and I will share my life with you. Sierra took back her hand and stuffed the jewelry into his pocket. Sharing? What does that mean? A werewolf has only one partner in his life. I will brand you, become your exclusive lover, and share my life with you. Even with his back and hands full of luggage, Eric was able to pick her up with strength. Sierra clamped her legs around his waist, letting him jump off with her, and rode away. She had been thinking along the way that having a partner who would be hers for the rest of her life, with a lifespan of more than 100 years or even longer without aging, was simply the most beautiful love. So what if they leave the prosperous upper-class society? They will never know how wonderful it is to be able to see the beautiful scenery in the mountains, forests, fields, and towns. Sierra followed Eric and was recognized and accepted by their tribe as a new member. The group boarded the train leaving Wally in the evening and headed to an unknown new place. Lizzie first knew that she was missing and asked many people to find her. However, when she heard that hundreds of people, including members of the capital church, had died where the Orion family lived, she was afraid that she would be in trouble, so she gradually stopped this thought. He heard the doctor say that his wife was giving birth to a son, and it didn't take long for him to get over the haze of losing his daughter. And in a secret corner that he didn't know, his wife sat up from the bed every night and went to the barn to meet her lover. She called this relationship a secret love, and she praised Sierra for being free and easy and having an unrestrained and sincere love. When Eric officially turned 18, they settled in a small town with spring-like weather all year round. Sierra bought a pretty little dress and lit candles in the warm bedroom with warm floral wallpaper. The fire in the fireplace was burning brightly, and when Eric came back with the cake despite the wind and snow, his lovely wife was lying on the bedside wearing a thin skirt, with a light yellow ribbon on her chest and a big bow. He stared at it for a long time before taking off his bearskin coat, sitting on the edge of the bed, hooking up the beautiful ribbon with his fingertips, and his eyes filled with dark light. Is this my gift tonight? Sierra's cheeks turned red, she held his hand and said with a stutter, well, it was Greenie's idea. She thought we were too young. It wasn't that he was too young, but she knew that he had never been embarrassed to speak. Every time, he would stop himself in the middle of the shower and take a shower. This had to be done with a sense of ceremony. The so-called sense of ceremony is that after walking for so long, they finally chose to settle here and have a house of their own, and it was on a special festival. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 277. Sierra, who traveled through the Y-Game novel, discovered that she was the vicious female supporting character who would be killed if she returned to Leicestershire. After attending the funeral, she resolutely submitted an application for admission to the Capital Marine Academy. Her mother, Clemens, had a friend who was the principal of the school. The servant accidentally revealed this to her. She also met the principal at the funeral that day. A friend who was thousands of miles away could come to commemorate the funeral, but her father did not show up, which showed that she was insignificant in his heart. Sierra knew that going back would be a bloody storm, so she submitted an application to that school and decided to stay away from the story that would make her miserable. About half a month later, she received a handwritten letter from the principal. She was successfully admitted to the Marine Xenozoology Research Institute and became a student of Edward and Mr. Thomas. This is a great honor, the servant told her. Clementhe had squeezed the last bit of value out of her daughter, Sierra thought. When spring came, she sold the big house in Leicestershire, dismissed the servants, deposited her huge fortune in the bank, set foot on the capital, and completely lost contact with her father Lizzie. I remember the sinking of the Royal cruise ship, which was a year ago. Sira shuttles around the campus with textbooks all day long to learn knowledge. She didn't study well when she was an orphan. She has experienced the campus atmosphere here, which is very good. She was very serious, and even though she was busy with her studies, she only occasionally thought about Leicestershire, and all she thought about was that the male and female protagonists were probably already happily together. She didn't know that for countless days and nights, Anna 11 lay in bed unable to sleep. The mermaid who had stayed at home for nearly half a year didn't have any good feelings for her, and she still broke away one night during a heavy rainstorm. The cage returned to the sea and disappeared without a trace. Sierra, have you packed your things? Compass, flashlight, gun, anesthetic. My companion Nicole was beside me and took the trouble to give instructions. Sierra interrupted her, everything is ready, don't talk about it, we are just on a sailing trip, don't make it so nervous. Nicole excitedly helped her pack her luggage, what about the sailing trip? Didn't you listen to Mr. Edward? He has mastered the habitat of the mermaid, and we are about to see that magical creature. It's not just what's on the specimen. Don't you look forward to wonderful things? Sira slapped a gold coin on the table, I bet we can't find the mermaid. Nicole hummed, you have to trust the teachers more. Sira didn't think so. She remembered that the mermaid in the novel was set on an island hidden in the world, and no one could find it except the heroine Anna 11. She regarded this trip as just a relaxing trip at sea. The Ocean Academy has its own ship. Before sunrise, all the people from the academy and several royal guards gathered together and set off against the rising sun. She stood on the bow of the boat, looked at the vast ocean, and sighed, it's so beautiful. Edward appeared beside her at some point and put his palm on her shoulder, it's nice, isn't it? Sierra frowned, then moved her body quietly to the side, the wind is too strong, I went to the teacher first. During this time, Edward began to touch her more and more, which Thomas said was part of his desire to pursue her. Sierra was disgusted because she had vaguely heard from Nicole that he had a fiancée who was far away in the country and had not been picked up. She got into her room, opened the window, opened the book and read quietly to get rid of those annoying emotions. On the third day of the safe voyage at sea, she put down her notebook and walked out of the bedroom door again. On the plywood in front of her, a body of a female mermaid, which had been dead for a long time and was almost dry, was hung high. A few dry scales fell down with the wind. Sira stretched out her hand to catch the scales, feeling cold in her heart. Are they crazy? After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the shore. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 278. Hey, she stepped forward quickly and shouted, Teacher Edward. What are you doing? Attract the fish to come over. Nicole took her arm and pulled her aside. The teacher said that this tribe is very protective of its companions and very vindictive. Doing so may be noticed by them who are guarding the territory and take the initiative to attack. The sunset was about to set. Sira looked up at the dried mermaid corpse and clenched her hands, but doing this will only anger them. So Nicole handed her a gun and a pair of earplugs, you must wear this when sleeping tonight. If the mermaids come, as long as we can't hear their singing, we won't be bewitched. Edward came over with a cold smile, I thought you were going to stay in the bedroom until we caught the mermaid. Sira said coldly to him, the mermaids don't just rely on sound to attack. Teacher, I advise you not to anger them and stop in moderation. This threat was insignificant to a research lunatic. He snorted coldly, go back to your room and stay there, Sierra, and lock the doors and windows at night. The warning had no effect, but Sierra didn't want to waste her life at sea. She stood in the middle of the plywood and pointed at the mermaid corpse. You just hung her up and used that pole to pierce the body from head to toe. Wouldn't this insulting behavior be defined as aggression by the mermaids? They are not low smart. What if they attack the ship collectively? They are the ones in the ocean. King. What she said makes sense. Although there is not enough actual evidence to prove how high the mermaid's IQ is, it is certainly not much lower. Killer whales also know how to hunt in groups. Why don't the mermaids know that? Syrah analyzed the matter, and several soldiers from the royal family thought it made sense. She confirmed to Edward, who was already dark-faced, "This lady is your student, right? If what she said is true, our current situation is very serious, it's dangerous." Thomas hurried over, patted the guns they were carrying, and said with a smile, "What is this for? They only have sound waves that are the most aggressive. They don't move very fast after being splinted. If there is an accident, just shoot even with a gun. Why can't you kill a fish?" This makes sense. Everyone was relieved because of the emotions provoked by Syrah, and felt that she was making a fuss out of a molehill. Edward stared at Syrah with a gloomy look. "It's them, it's not them. When did you even use words so wrongly? Do you always treat these mermaids as human beings?" Sierra's heart tightened and she exhaled, "In my heart, there is no difference between them and humans." Edward walked over angrily, grabbed the back of her neck, and forced her to look up. "Look at it for yourself, look at its tail. How dare you say it's a human? Do you have a tail? You only have a heart full of useless compassion." He threw his hand forward, and Sierra stumbled 2 steps away. The back of her neck hurt from being pinched by her fingers, and her earplugs fell to the ground, but she did not pick them up. She just held the pistol and the fallen corpse scales tightly, and turned around. "Just leave." On the darkened water, a head sank into the water, flicked its long tail, and swam quickly towards the depths. Midnight. It rained heavily on the sea, and the watchmen around the ship did not dare to relax their vigilance and kept a close eye on the sea surface. It was difficult for Sierra to rest in the room. The rain was too loud and it was hitting the glass window very noisily. She turned over and faced the window. The rotating searchlight on the ship swept across the window from time to time. She forced herself to close her eyes. Creak. The door was quietly opened halfway in the heavy rain. Sierra didn't notice anything was wrong, but when she felt faintly sleepy, her neck suddenly felt itchy, as if something had touched her. She opened her eyes instantly and saw a black shadow crawling on her body. Her eyes widened in shock and she opened her mouth to scream. With quick eyes and quick hands, Edward covered her mouth, and his raised face was in lust under the searchlight. He said in a deep voice, "You know? When the principal asked me if I could take you on, I saw your photo. At that time, I thought to myself, how could there be such a beautiful girl in this world? Like a dazzling red rose." Sierra pushed him hard, but there was a huge difference in strength between the two. She was so restrained that she couldn't move at all and could only stare fiercely. Edward looked obsessed and touched her hands and face. "You think I didn't let go? Why should a noble girl with no talents come to study in a higher education institution? You're going to repay me, you know, Syrah. The capital you have to study in school and talk and laugh in society are all given by me, and you have to repay me." Edward held her chin and stared at the pink lips with crazy eyes. "Give it to me." Sarah quietly put her hand under the pillow and held the pistol. "If she kills someone here, she will admit that she will face jail time later." She pursed her lips tightly and quietly loaded the gun with her fingers. Just when Edward was about to kiss her and she was about to shoot him, a burst of gunfire rang out on the deck outside. Boom! "The mermaid is here. The mermaid!" A piercing siren sounded. Edward straightened up instantly, cursed under his breath and left the room in a hurry. Sierra's tense body relaxed and she fell on the bed, her back unknowingly becoming wet with sweat. She slowly sat up and went to pour herself a glass of water with weak steps to moisten her dry lips. The fishing net on the ship caught a mermaid. Under the heavy rain, several people worked hard to pull the net up. 123 pull. Get up. Around the ship, several royal soldiers kept shooting at the mermaids who tried to attack the ship. Probably because they were afraid of their guns, they only made a few hurried attacks, then turned around and sank into the water and ran away. The only mermaid that was caught was also abandoned by them. The behavior also prompted laughter. Sure enough, women are indecisive and suspicious. These mermaids are so afraid of guns and want to capsize our boat. Ha 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 ha. Let's have a cigarette and celebrate. Nicole, still covered in water, rushed into Syrah's room and said excitedly, "Go out and take a look. Teacher Edward and the others really caught a mermaid. That method during the day really works." Sierra didn't think much about it at this time, just thinking that they were just lucky. She forced a smile and said, "I'll put on some clothes and go out." She put on her raincoat and hood and walked out into the cold storm. There were many people on the deck surrounding the fishing net, and several beams of light shone on the mermaid under the net. Sierra walked forward from behind the crowd. The first thing that caught her eye was the fish tail that was coiled up like a snake body. It was all black. The black light shone on it with a sharp cold light. Above the fish tail, there was a transitional color. Scales and gradually cold white skin. A perfect male body is revealed, with long silver threads covering key parts of the chest. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the shore. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 279. He remained motionless and allowed the fishing net to cover him. His face hidden under his hair seemed to be aware of a certain line of sight, and he slowly raised his head. The lake blue eyes, which were the same as those of humans, were covered with a thin film, and their fierce eyes, like those looking at prey, collided with Sierra's through the air, and their expression changed in an instant. Sierra. The low call was a language unique to the mermaid tribe. No one present could understand him. On the contrary, several royal guards who had taken off their earplugs thought he was trying to attack and shot him in the tail. The hard black scales were shattered and the bullet was deeply stuck in the flesh. Rockside finally swung his tail in pain and let out a beast-like roar from his mouth. He was lying on the oak floor, his eyes fixed on Sierra, never moving away. Who is it looking at? Its eyes. Is it you, Sierra? Or me? Nicole felt that the mermaid's eyes were too fierce, and she shivered in fear. However, Sierra took off her hood under the heavy rain, revealing a complete little face, letting the rain drip down her chin. She approached the mermaid and said loudly, "Finally, we managed to make up a mermaid. Why should we shoot? What if we kill him?" She stood in front of Luoxid. Even she didn't know where she got the courage to stand less than half a meter away from him and fight against everyone. Perhaps it was the corpse of the mermaid that had been treated cruelly as a specimen since that day, or perhaps it was the row of cannons installed under the boat that could easily destroy an entire island. She now felt that what these people were doing now was disturbing other people's homes and frantically trying to kill them all. Edward took a deep look at her, and asked everyone to tighten the net and put the aquarium brought on the deck to secure it. The aquarium, made of special glass and wire mesh, was stuck on the bow plywood. Due to the pain of bullets stuck in the flesh, the mermaid struggled wildly as long as the fishing net was operated to lift it, causing the entire hangar to collapse. "He is in pain. The bullet must be dug out first." Sierra wiped his face and said loudly, "Let the doctor go over and dig out the bullet. Otherwise, the hangar and fishing net will not last long." "Where is the sedative?" "Use a sedative." The doctor who came with him took a sedative, but injecting it was another problem. Who would go up? Edward immediately ordered a royal soldier. He also knew that his mission this time required absolute obedience to orders, so he took the tranquilizer from the doctor's hand, approached the mermaid, and cursed a series of words at it, he yelled at it to quiet down so that he could take action. The mermaid seemed to be really disturbed by his cry. The fish's tail curled up into a ball again, its eyes dark. Seeing this, the soldier bent down and was about to pierce his arm with a needle, but the hand that suddenly pierced out of the net instantly strangled his neck. Under the majestic rainy night, the snapping sound of the neck being broken was extremely clear. The limp body fell to the side, and the mermaid slowly withdrew his hand from outside the punctured net. Everyone was stunned. It can rip the web open. Nicole trembled and shook Syrah's arm to pull her back. It can obviously tear the net apart with its hands. Did you see the sharp nails on its fingers? Our special fishing net was easily torn apart by it. What did it mean when I was just arrested? Is it? It was intentional. Syrah picked up her words and repeated, it was intentional. She looked at the corpse at her feet, then at the motionless mermaid, took a deep breath, and picked up the tranquilizer that fell on the oak floor. For some reason, Syrah felt that the mermaid never looked away from her when he first saw her, nor did he show any fear or attack on her. It was ridiculous to think like this. He obviously killed someone right in front of her. These words seemed to be deliberately beautifying him, but she felt that was the case in her heart. He won't hurt her. Hey. Sierra squatted down and said warmly, can I help you calm down and then take out the bullet? Loos yet couldn't understand, but she took another step closer, and he didn't react. He was just as calm as before the soldier was killed. Thomas was a little anxious and shouted for her to come back. After all, she was a daughter of a nobleman. It would be very troublesome if something happened at sea. Edward stopped him, let her try. Anyway, she always has inexplicable pity for these mermaids. It's time for her to remember it. Thomas asked loudly, are you crazy? It will kill her. Syrah slowly raised her hand, and every time her white wrist came closer to his arm, the mermaid's eyes would move with it, always alert to her behavior, but until she surpassed the distance where the soldier had just approached him, she did not attract any attention. Of killings. Relax, Sierra coaxed him in a low voice, that's it, it's okay. Her trembling fingertips still betrayed her nervousness, and when she successfully touched the mermaid's smooth and cold skin, the person behind her burst out in surprise. She did it? Syrah touched him, and the face under the fishing net slowly approached her. Under the long silver thread, a face as beautiful as a god was completely exposed to her. She was stunned. Whether it was her previous world or the current world, Syrah had never seen anyone who could look more beautiful than a statue. Her mind was bewitched by his sight, and her ears heard the whispers spilling from his lips, like a call from hell. Sierra. In the ancient and lengthy voice, Loos yet called out her name completely and stutteringly. As a mermaid, within a few minutes of landing, he learned her name from other people and learned how to call it out. Everyone who heard his voice was shocked again. Nicole kept backing up, feeling chilled in her heart. He can talk, my God. Who said the mermaid's IQ is not high? It took him maybe a few seconds to learn to call Syrah. Our research is wrong. They compared killer whales are so smart. Edward and Thomas also had a premonition that something bad was going to happen. If the IQ of mermaids is almost the same as that of humans, then what were they doing when they fled in all directions? This is more like a deliberately created illusion, an illusion that deceives everyone. There are reefs ahead, the helmsman yelled, I've lost my way. It turned out that as soon as they set their sights on this strange mermaid, the ship had shifted its direction without anyone noticing. No, 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 no. Edward's face went through a series of changes from excitement to surprise to horror. Except for a few soldiers who pointed their guns at the mermaid, everyone ran around the ship to check the situation of the reefs. This place is full of dangers and is a completely unfamiliar area. If the bottom of the ship is hit by a reef and breaks, all of them will have to answer here tonight. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the shore. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 280. Damn it, Edward ran to the mermaid and pointed his gun at it. Let go of Syrah. Let the ship get back on track. Lugo Elevenda's face was expressionless, his fingers holding Syrah's arm and refusing to relax at all. Edward was irritated by him and yelled at him, I know you understand. Do as I say. Otherwise I will kill you. Bang. The hull suddenly tilted and swayed to one side, and the oak barrel rolled down from one side. Ed quickly turned sideways to avoid it. At this moment, Lizzie tore open the fishing net in an instant, knocked off the tranquilizer with one tail, and stood up holding Syrah's waist with one hand. She didn't expect that the mermaid who was caught ashore could still have such strong mobility. Seeing the shark-like teeth exposed in his lips, Sierra suddenly shuddered hard and wanted to break away from him in fear. Let me go. She knew that the mermaid might not have any ill intentions towards her, but that didn't mean that she wouldn't be scared when he picked her up and rushed towards the railing. He looked like he was going to take her into the sea with him. In such cold water, she would definitely drown and freeze to death. Syrah's resistance was suddenly fierce. Rockside was afraid that the nails he used to attack would hurt her. After being distracted for a moment, he was shot in the abdomen. He arched his body in pain, but held the girl harder to his chest, protecting her tightly. He stood upright on his fishtail, quickly dodging the incoming bullets, and while stumbling, he said to the girl in his arms, I won't hurt you. Pure English words and unfamiliar words jumped out one by one. Sierra understood it, and her struggle became smaller. Edward's voice came closer in the rain, damn mermaid. Monster. I'll kill you. Bang. 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 Syrah shrank in Rox's arms and watched as his arm suddenly jerked forward in front of him. When he lowered it again, a blood hole appeared on the white and smooth arm, and blood dripped on his face. Sierra's heart stopped for a moment in fear, and she realized a second later that the bullet that was about to be inserted into her head was blocked by the mermaid's bare hands. She looked towards the front of the boat channel. The person holding the gun was Edward, and he wanted to kill her. At this moment, Syrah was not sure whether she could really go back alive after being put down by the mermaid. Edward is a madman, a complete madman. There were tears in her eyes, and she subconsciously pressed closer to the cold arms behind her. Luosied felt that she was even more frightened. His narrow eyes narrowed and he let out an angry roar. He blocked the bullet with his body again, and jumped off the boat with the person in his arms. Edward quickly rushed to the railing and fired wildly into the water, his eyes red with blood. After receiving the order to attack, the mermaid hid at the bottom of the boat and used even more amazing tail power to create a vortex. The ship, which was originally just tilting sharply to one side, would be sucked directly into the center by the vortex. People on the whole ship could not stand and fell to the ground, rolling around on the oak boards like those oak barrels. Some royal soldiers fell into the sea and were instantly eaten by the mermaids waiting for an opportunity. Blood spread on the Black Sea, and human screams of terror and despair resounded throughout the reef. Syrah was dragged a little further into the sea by Lucid. Only her wet head was exposed above the water. She was struggling to adapt to the cold water pressure environment. Her heart stopped after discovering that the boat was about to capsize. Trembling constantly, she saw Nicole, who was clinging to a plank of the boat and was about to fall into the sea. She quickly pushed Luosied's chest, pointed at the girl and said in panic, "She hasn't done anything, she is innocent. Don't let the merman kill her. Please." After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the shore. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 281. Nicole was her roommate and had always taken care of her since she entered school. Sierra really didn't want such a young life to die like this. Her anxiety infected Roxid, and he nuzzled her cheek docilely and roared a few times at the group of cannibalistic mermaids. The girl who couldn't hold on anymore and fell into the water screamed and fell into the water. She was knocked unconscious by a tail and was dragged out of the water by a mermaid. Logosied stumbled and said, "It's okay." Sierra hugged his neck and breathed a sigh of relief after seeing that Nicole was safe. As for the remaining people screaming for help, she pretended not to see or hear them. She knew that those people deserved to be angered by the merfolk. Going home, Luxid's webbed paws gently pressed her into his chest, and he sank into the water dragging his injured tail. The head of her head was submerged in water, and the feeling of suffocation came toward Sierra again. When she was so hypoxic that she panicked, a pair of lips immediately pressed over her to get oxygen. The cold lips touched, and Sierra tightened her hand instantly. Her eyes suddenly widened, staring blankly at the pair of lake blue eyes that were so close. Although she knew that this mermaid was supplying her with oxygen, it was too intimate and unbelievable. Logosied admired the little expression on her face, licking her lips from time to time, and rubbing her face with his cheek, completely looking like he had found a worthless treasure. Sierra didn't know what to do for a moment, so she simply obeyed and was led all the way back to an island by swimming. At this time, the morning light had just risen from the sea, and the ocean was calm. She was pushed onto the beach by the mermaid, and a lot of water came out of her mouth. The cold wind blew, and she shivered and sneezed. Sierra looked around. Below her was a white sandy beach with giant coconut trees in the distance and a giant stranded ship. Everything was unfamiliar. She crossed her arms across her chest and had a horrifying guess in her mind. She was taken back to the legendary island by the mermaid. She suddenly turned around and saw the mermaid with a black tail like a snake lying on the beach. There was blood on its tail fin and abdomen. The same was true on her arms. The wounds on her hair were swollen, which was shocking to look at. The bullets that should have been fired into her body were blocked by him. Even though she was a little scared, Sierra stood up and walked over. The half-white mermaid was lying on her back on the beach, with silver threads covering the ground, revealing a beautiful and frail face. "Sierra." He half opened his eyes and called her in a low voice, gentle and caring. Sierra's expression suddenly changed and she knelt down next to him. She was a little at a loss and her words became stumbling. "The bullet is stuck in the flesh. We have to take the bullet out, otherwise you will die." Subconsciously, she didn't want such a beautiful mermaid to die. She looked left and right, and finally fixed her sight on the ship that had been stranded for who knows how long. She leaned over and touched his face, and said with a shiver, "There should be an infirmary on the ship. I'll go find something and come back to help you, okay? Can you understand what I mean?" Logosied struggled to understand her words, tapped his chin gently, and called her name over and over again. "Sella, come back." She nodded, got up, picked up her skirt and ran towards the ship. Seeing her running away, Logosied reluctantly sat up. Several gunshot wounds on his body caused him severe pain. A mermaid poked his head out and whispered to him, "Lord, what are you doing? Dig out the bullets." Logosied endured the pain, not caring about the blood flowing all the way, which was almost overwhelming his body. He looked in the direction of the ship and murmured, "I found her." "Who?" "My sweetheart. She'll heal me, she'll help me."